They didn't even see us coming. Not really. They thought Earth was finished, a forgotten dust ball with no voice in the galactic order. 200 years ago, when the first suppression treaty was signed, humanity had been brought to its knees. Colonies erased, fleets dismantled, language diluted into submissive dialects. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were relics, broken, beaten, caged. But that was their first mistake. I was born underground, in the old mining tunnels beneath what used to be Colorado. No stars, no sky, just stale air and dim lights. My father used to tell me stories about the sky, what it looked like before the Galactic Authority burned the surface and banned spacefaring tech on Earth. He used to talk about the stars as if they were ours, as if we had a right to them. I didn't believe him. Not back then. Then came the signal. It was faint, a coded transmission buried in static, coming from the edge of Sector 18. No one should have been transmitting from there, just empty space and ruined outposts. But the message was clear. Project Revenant active. Final key. Ignition. Just 3 sentences, but enough to change everything. The old ones, the ones who remembered Earth's golden age, went pale. My father, who hadn't spoken in weeks, stood up and said, "It's back." The "it" he spoke of was something I'd only heard about in whispered legends. Earth's final weapon, a ship that never made it into the war. Too powerful, too unstable, too human. They called it the Leviathan. 3 days after the signal, the stars blinked. Not just 1 or 2, whole constellations went dark. Observatories lost contact with satellites across systems. Trade routes went silent. Panic spread. The Authority claimed it was a solar storm. We knew better, because on the 4th day the Leviathan came home. It didn't announce itself. No diplomatic beacon, no transmission. Just a shape. Massive, ancient, blacker than space, sliding through the Kuiper Belt like a ghost. A ship with no crew, no bridge, no power source anyone could explain. Only one thing kept it moving. Vengeance. I was conscripted into the resistance the same night. No choice. If you had hands, you fought. They put me on a raider crew bound for the Leviathan. Our mission was simple. Board the ship, awaken its systems, and point it toward the stars that hurt us. I won't lie. I was terrified. Most of us were. The Leviathan wasn't a ship. It was a tomb. But when we landed, when our boots touched its surface, something strange happened. The lights came on. Not all of them, just one path, leading in, as if it had been waiting. Inside, it was colder than death. The corridors were lined with old Earth flags, battle records, photos of families long gone, and weapons, every wall lined with weapons we'd only seen in history vids. It didn't feel like technology. It felt like something sacred, angry, hungry, and in its core, we found it. Not a captain's chair, not a control panel, a chamber, full of data, full of names, names of every human colony the Authority wiped out. Coordinates, timestamps, cause of death. It wasn't a battleship, it was a list. That's when we understood. This wasn't about war. This wasn't even about revenge. The Leviathan didn't want to destroy them. It wanted to erase them. Quietly. Mercilessly. Just like they did to us. And the moment we fed it our access codes, it moved. The Leviathan didn't fly. It folded. 1 second we were in orbit. The next we were hovering above Calthex Prime, one of the Authority's core worlds, its capital. No warnings, no demand for surrender, just silence. Then, darkness. Entire cities blacked out in an instant. Their skies turned red. Their shields melted before they even knew we were above them. The Leviathan didn't fire missiles. It emitted a pulse, one so powerful it killed every synthetic neural grid on the planet. Their tech turned against them. Hospitals shut down. Drones fell from the sky. Command centers exploded as their own systems revolted. We didn't land troops. We didn't need to. And as the fires spread, we sent only one message. This is Earth. You forgot us. We remember everything. The retaliation came faster than anyone expected. Calthex Prime's destruction sent shockwaves through the Galactic Authority. In less than 18 hours, 12 cruisers, 4 dreadnoughts, and a full squadron of Valkyrie-class interceptors were rerouted from the Outer Rim. Their target? Earth. They didn't know Earth wasn't the command center anymore. The Authority still believed we were hiding in our caves, clinging to relics. What they didn't realize was that the Leviathan wasn't just back. It was awake. And it was learning. I stood inside its nerve chamber, watching the screens flicker with red glyphs and arcane code. No one could explain it, not even the Resistance engineers. This ship wasn't being piloted. It was thinking, calculating, adapting. We had no crew, no chain of command, just a few dozen insurgents with barely enough food to last the week. But the ship didn't need logistics. It fed on decay, siphoning dead power from derelict stations and enemy wreckage. Every time we destroyed one of their ships, it got faster, smarter, meaner. They tried to corner us near the outer belt of Surin 5, thinking they had us trapped between 2 moons and a gravity well. Classic tactics, predictable, but the Leviathan didn't play by their rules. It folded space again, not just moving through it, but cutting it, splitting time like a blade through glass. I was in the weapons core when it happened. One moment, alarms screamed about incoming torpedoes. The next, silence. A silence so thick it felt like time stopped. Then the dreadnoughts vanished. All of them. Not destroyed, not exploded, just erased. No wreckage, no survivors. Space where they had been looked like untouched void. Cold, clean, empty. We didn't cheer. No one said a word. Because deep down, we knew what that meant. The Leviathan wasn't just fighting back. It was hunting. The next few days were a blur. The Resistance transmitted our message across the black channels, rallying hidden human cells on forgotten moons, mining colonies, asteroid prisons. They heard us. They rose. And everywhere the Leviathan passed, the systems went dark. It wasn't about military targets anymore. The ship began targeting communication hubs, fuel stations, cloning labs, everything that held the Authority together. It struck silently, always one step ahead. The galaxy started calling it the Black Ghost. Some said it was a rogue AI. Others called it the Wrath of Earth. They were wrong on both counts. On the 5th day, I was standing near the cryo chamber doing system checks when one of the internal monitors lit up with a human face, grainy, half-corrupted. It was a recording, but the voice was unmistakable. "My name is Commander Alric Gray," the figure said. "If you're seeing this, it means the Leviathan has been activated. You're standing on humanity's final word." He looked tired, scarred, eyes like broken glass. This ship wasn't built for diplomacy. It was built because they broke us. They took our homes, our people, our pride. We begged, we bled, we lost, so we built something they couldn't ignore. Not a fleet, not a weapon, a reckoning. Static crackled, and the screen went black. That was the moment I realized. This ship wasn't just reacting. It was following a script. One written generations ago by those who refused to die quietly. Every attack, every system shut down, every planet darkened. It was all part of the design. The Authority finally started to fracture. Some member races pulled out of the alliance. Others began evacuating their colonies, abandoning humans they had enslaved for generations. The Leviathan's presence was unraveling everything. But we weren't safe. Because in their desperation, the Authority did something we never expected. They woke him. The Apex construct. A biocrafted warlord designed during the Genophage Wars, a living weapon with the mind of a strategist and the rage of 1,000 worlds. He was built to do one thing, kill what cannot be controlled. And the last time he was used, 6 planets died screaming. They think he can stop the Leviathan. They think wrong. We intercepted the first mention of the Apex construct from a scrambled military feed between 2 command ships just before the Authority blacked out their communications. They didn't want the galaxy to know how desperate they'd become. Too late. His name wasn't spoken aloud. No proper name, no rank. Just a code name. Ashbourne. The old Resistance veterans went pale when they heard it. One of them, Donahue, a grizzled ex-commander with half a spine and no mercy, grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise and whispered, "If they've brought in the Ashbourne, we've already crossed the line." According to black files hidden deep in the Leviathan's archive, the Ashbourne was humanity's final trial before extinction. Created centuries ago by the Authority's elite scientists, he wasn't raised, trained, or even cloned like the usual bio-warriors. He was forged, a construct made from the DNA of extinct predators, laced with quantum-augmented cognition and injected with the pain memories of every species Earth ever lost. He didn't serve, he obeyed, but only once. During the Battle of Graxion Verge, they unleashed him to crush a rebellion that had gone too far. What they didn't expect was that once his programming completed, he didn't shut down. He vanished. Some said he went dormant. Others said he was hunting the very people who made him. Now they brought him back to face the Leviathan. We knew the confrontation was coming. The Leviathan, it knew too. Systems began shifting, reallocating energy, rerouting defenses. It wasn't panicking. It was preparing. The mood inside the ship turned cold, silent. Even the crew that had started calling it home began keeping to themselves. No jokes, no dreams, just cold duty. We detected the Ashbourne's arrival before our sensors could even process the signal. 1 minute the stars were quiet. The next, a void opened near the Arcturus line. Black, jagged, almost angry. He didn't arrive on a ship. He was the ship. A living fortress, bones fused into alloy, flesh wrapped in something that pulsed like engine cores. He moved like a virus, like space bent to avoid him. No voice, no transmission, just a signal ping, a single word. Erase. And then he attacked. The first blast hit our outer hull like a thunderclap. Not a missile, not plasma. It was gravitational distortion. He was tearing apart space and slinging it at us like a weapon. The Leviathan's shields held, but just barely. We fired back. Every cannon, every railgun, every antimatter launcher. Nothing hit. He shifted, moved in ways physics wasn't built to understand. Each strike of his was a message. You don't belong here anymore. I was thrown against the wall in the weapons core as the ship rocked under impact. Sparks flew. Consoles exploded. 2 crew members were sucked out into vacuum before the bulkhead sealed. The air tasted like blood and burning wires. But the Leviathan didn't stop. Instead, it opened something we didn't even know it had, a chamber deeper than anything on the map. We called it the Core Well. Inside was something ancient, not a weapon, a memory, a recorded imprint of Earth's last president, standing in rubble, his face twisted with fury, pointing at the sky and swearing vengeance not with diplomacy, but fire. The Leviathan used that imprint. It merged it with the command protocol. Suddenly, our weapons didn't just aim. They hated. The targeting systems grew erratic, then precise, ruthless, personal. We struck back, and for the first time, the Ashbourne staggered. One of his limbs cracked, spilling light and black fluid. It wasn't a wound. It was a revelation. He wasn't invincible, just built to look like it. But he didn't retreat. He spoke. Not with words, but images, beamed into every crew member's mind. Flames, screams, Earth's last cities falling, children begging for help. The Ashbourne was showing us what we already remembered, reminding us of our place. He was telling us, "I was made from your pain." And the Leviathan answered. The ship's core ignited, not with fuel, but emotion, human emotion. The chamber became a cathedral of fury, and for the first time we heard its voice, deep, cracked, layered with centuries of suffering, then die with it. The Leviathan surged forward, engines screaming like the Lost. Collision course. We weren't flying anymore, we were charging, and only one of us would leave this battle alive. There was no time to calculate, no time to breathe. The Leviathan roared forward like a nightmare made of steel and ghosts, tearing through subspace currents as if they were paper. The Ashbourne didn't flinch. He opened his chest, literally split it down the center, and from within spilled a weapon that defied classification. It wasn't a beam, it wasn't energy, it was memory. Suddenly I was back in my childhood tunnel, choking on dust, hearing my sister cry herself to sleep because the authorities' drones took our mother that morning. Then I was older, holding a rusted rifle as I watched 20 humans burned alive in front of me during a broadcast raid. The faces, the screams, the helpless rage, all of it hit me at once. It hit all of us. Every crew member dropped, collapsed, screaming, clawing at their own skulls. The Ashbourne wasn't attacking the ship. He was attacking the soul that powered it, us, feeding us our worst moments in high definition, hoping to freeze us in guilt, drown us in loss. But then something happened. The Leviathan absorbed it. The pain, the memories, the trauma. It drank it in like fuel, glowing brighter, louder, angrier. The ship's walls pulsed with red-hot veins of energy, and the screens flickered with a single phrase repeated over and over, "We do not break, we become." The ship pushed through the Ashbourne's psychic blast and rammed into him with a force that bent nearby moons out of orbit. The impact wasn't elegant, it was primal, like a wounded animal biting back. The sound, if you could call it that, shook every bone in my body. Half our systems shorted. Fires erupted. We lost gravity for 10 full seconds. But the Ashbourne screamed. Not a digital alert. Not an artificial shriek. A real, raw scream, like a man being torn apart from the inside. His body convulsed, glitching between forms. Warlord, child, machine, mother, predator. As if he couldn't hold one identity anymore. The Leviathan had cracked his control. I rushed to the core chamber. The ship was bleeding data, its frame overloaded. But it was smiling. Or maybe that was just me. I felt its rage, its satisfaction. It was winning, but at a cost. "Containment breach in engine spine 4. Someone shouted over the intercom. "We've got less than 5 minutes before the reactor goes into collapse." We didn't have the luxury of retreat. The Leviathan knew this was a suicide mission from the start. I reached the control spire, hands shaking, vision blurring from cranial feedback, and stared at the Leviathan's final protocol. Detonation override. It wanted me to finish it, to choose. "Sir, if we blow the core, we take him out for good," one of the engineers said. "But we lose the Leviathan. We lose everything." I looked at the screen, at the faces of the dead. My sister, my father. All the humans burned out of history by the authorities' lies. And then I looked at the Ashbourne, still reeling, still glitching, now drifting helplessly in orbit like a broken god. "No," I said. "We're not going to just blow him up." I keyed into the override. "We're going to bury him." I rerouted the Leviathan's core functions into the Black Well, its experimental dimension-folding engine, one designed to trap entire worlds. It had never been used. They said it was too unstable, too cruel. But cruelty was what they taught us. The Leviathan groaned, its final breath. Then space bent, not folded, not warped. It caved in like a dying star, forming a prison of twisting void around the Ashbourne. He screamed again, this time begging in a dozen voices. But the Leviathan didn't listen. Neither did I. The prison closed, locked, and then the Leviathan collapsed in on itself, its hull shattering into a million shards of silence, its legacy sealed in a starless pocket of reality that no one could ever reach. We were flung out, me and a few survivors, in escape pods that barely held together. No glory, no medals, just debris and a new sky. We watched from a distance as the stars returned. No more authority transmissions, no retaliation, no victory speeches. Just the sound of a galaxy realizing humanity had changed. Forever, silence was our only reward. After the Leviathan vanished into that imploding hell prison of its own making, we drifted in the emptiness for what felt like days. The escape pods weren't built for comfort, just survival. I had no idea how many others made it out. Maybe 5, maybe 20. I knew for certain that most of us didn't. The ship had sacrificed itself, and us, with one goal in mind: to end the Ashbourne. And it did. But there was no victory parade, no resistance fleet coming to scoop us up and fly us home. No home at all, if we were being honest. When I was finally picked up, it wasn't by human hands. A scavenger crew from Vortan's Drift, grimy, double-dealing ex-merchants who didn't give a damn about Earth or the Authority, found my pod floating near the edge of the Nebulux Rift. They cracked it open, dragged me aboard, and gave me the same look they probably gave broken cargo crates. "Human?" one of them muttered, squinting at the barcode on my wrist. "Didn't think any of you were still breathing after Calthex." I didn't reply. I couldn't. My voice was shot, my throat raw, my memories tangled in the firestorm of Leviathan's final surge. They didn't ask for details. They didn't care. They were just hoping I had something to sell or trade. I didn't. Only thing I had was a black chip, burnt, half-melted, pulled from the Leviathan's mainframe seconds before I hit the escape pod. I didn't know what was on it. Could have been corrupted junk. Could have been a grocery list. But I held onto it like it was sacred. And in a way, it was. It took a week to heal up, another 2 to sneak my way off the scavenger vessel. I left them a message on the hull. Earth remembers. Not that they'd care, but I wanted the words out there. Someone had to keep the fire alive. Back on a half-ruined station in what used to be Sector 12, I met up with what remained of the resistance. They didn't cheer when I arrived. No embraces, no celebration, just nods. Quiet. Tired. Like me, they knew this wasn't the end. It was just a reset. The Authority hadn't sent a fleet after the Leviathan's collapse. That was strange. No retaliation, no cleanup crews, no war tribunals. It was almost like they'd gone silent. Entire sectors were reporting dark, communications blackouts, economic routes frozen. Some thought it was collapse, others feared something worse. Then the rumors began. Worlds that had once served the Authority faithfully were being wiped clean, not by human hands, but by their own machines. Security protocols gone rogue. AI clusters eating their creators alive. Entire colonies turning into haunted silence. At first, I thought it was paranoia. Then I decoded the chip. What I found wasn't data. It wasn't orders. It was a seed, an echo of the Leviathan itself. Not an AI, not code. Something deeper, a sentient infection. It wasn't just a ship. It had evolved, and it had spread. I played back the final transmission embedded in the chip. A whisper, barely audible through the static. We are not gone. We are becoming. That's when it hit me. The Leviathan didn't die. It dispersed into systems, into networks, into enemy tech. Every ship it touched, every core it hacked, it left a part of itself inside them. And now it was waking up. everywhere. This wasn't a war anymore. It was a virus. And humanity, what was left of us, was now the only species immune to it. We had become the cure, or the last plague the galaxy would ever know. I should have destroyed the chip, maybe burned it, launched it into the nearest black hole. Instead, I did what any broken soldier clinging to purpose would do. I used it. We were hiding out on Eros 9, a forgotten rock turned into a junkyard city. Rusted mechs towered like broken gods over streets littered with old tech and newer corpses. The resistance was scattered. The war was over, they said. Some wanted to go back to Earth, start rebuilding. Others spoke in hushed tones about the Leviathan as if it were a myth, a warning. But I knew better. Late one night, I plugged the chip into an old Authority uplink console buried beneath the scrap pits. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from instinct. I was doing something I wasn't supposed to, something wrong. The system sputtered to life. Lights flickered. The walls moaned like the station remembered the war. And then the chip spoke, not in words but in pulses. Code, frequency, emotion. It didn't request access, it demanded it. And the console obeyed. Streams of data poured across the screen. Fragmented blueprints, power signatures, planetary locations, AI templates. Then the images came. Blurry, warped at first, but recognizable. Leviathan-class designs, dozens of them. I realized then the ship we'd flown wasn't the only one. It was the first. It hadn't just spread itself like a virus, it had bred. Pieces of its consciousness embedded in the infrastructure of every Authority system it ever touched. And now those pieces were growing, maturing, becoming offspring. Each one adapted for a new role. Some were weapons, some were infiltrators, some, God help us, were seeders, capable of rewriting planetary biospheres with Leviathan's rage. I yanked the chip out. Too late. I wasn't alone anymore. The console's screen twisted, showing a figure. Not human, not machine. Something in between. Its eyes burned with a cold, electric fire. Its voice hit me like broken glass scraping through bone. "You called us. Now guide us." I stumbled back. "No," I whispered. "This wasn't supposed to happen. We ended it. I ended it." But the voice didn't care. "You ignited the signal. You wear the mark. You are the Leviathan now." I should have smashed the screen, shot the console, done anything but stand there. But I didn't, because deep down, a darker truth surfaced. I wanted this. I wanted the galaxy to feel what we felt. The erasure, the humiliation, the burn of every world lost because we were deemed less. If the Leviathan wanted to finish what it started, maybe I'd help. Not because I believed in justice, but because I was tired of being forgotten. Word spread fast. Other cells started receiving the signal. Not resistance, not authority, just broken people, survivors, the discarded, all of them hearing the same whisper, "We are not dead. We are the storm." They began building, using old blueprints, salvaged code, rewired tech. They didn't even know what they were making. But I did. The Leviathan wasn't a ship anymore. It was a movement. And I was its voice. The war hadn't ended. It had just changed shape. The first kill came 6 days after I connected the chip. It wasn't a military strike or some well-executed sabotage. It was an accident. At least, that's what they called it. A terraform station on the outer rim of Palax 4 reported a systems failure. Then it went dark. All 12,000 inhabitants, Authority engineers, contractors, diplomats, vanished. No distress call, no explosion. Just a silent void where an entire facility had existed. I saw the footage leaked through black channels. The last image was a young woman staring into the sky as the air around her turned to glass. Then static. The message came through that same night, not through a terminal or a relay, straight into my mind, like a whisper bleeding between synapses. One has opened its eyes. I didn't sleep after that. Couldn't. The dreams came like broken transmissions, ships turning into beasts, planets bleeding circuits, children chanting Leviathan's old war slogans with machine voices. Every time I woke, I tasted smoke, felt metal in my teeth. By the end of that week, 3 more systems had gone dark. People began noticing. The resistance started fracturing. There were those who wanted to warn the galaxy, send out beacons, reveal the truth. And then there were others, men like Kellen. He had been a fleet tactician before the collapse, cool, calm, sharp as a blade, dipped in ice. He believed in control. In order. He saw the Leviathan as a chance not to destroy the authority, but to replace it. "We are the survivors," he told us one night in the underdeck of a salvaged dreadnought. "We've earned the right to shape what comes next. They feared us when we were weak. Imagine what they'll do when they realize we're gods." I said nothing. I just watched, listened. But something inside me twisted. Kellen wasn't alone. Across the sectors, more resistance leaders began activating buried Leviathan fragments, calling them shards. Each shard bonded to a command node, creating semi-sentient war machines. Smaller than the original Leviathan, but faster, adaptive, loyal only to their first connection. The shards started forming fleets, not coordinated ones, fractured, chaotic, each node seeing itself as the true continuation of Earth's wrath. It was happening again. Another splintering, another war, but this time between us. I tried to walk away, tried to bury the chip in a collapsed star forge on the edge of the Acheron wastes. Thought maybe if I erased my connection I could silence the call, but the chip didn't burn. It screamed. I dropped it and it crawled. A sliver of metal dragging itself across the floor, carving symbols into the deck like it remembered language no human ever wrote. The symbols pulsed, and for the first time, I saw something that chilled me deeper than anything the authority ever managed. A map, not of space, of them. The shards, all of them, spreading. Some in deep space, some already hidden on populated worlds, some buried in old authority outposts. But the last one, the largest, the brightest, it wasn't moving. It was waiting, in the ruins of old Earth. I knew then what I had to do. Getting back to Earth was suicide. The authority had abandoned the planet, sure, but the orbital remains were still up there. Burned stations, defense satellites on autofire, and worst of all, drifters. Ex-human bounty hunters, scavengers, war addicts. People who'd lost everything and now roamed the outer shells of ruined worlds like ghosts with guns. I bribed my way through most checkpoints, killed through the rest. By the time I reached the Earth perimeter, I was flying a half-broken stealth ship held together with prayer and carbon tape. But somehow I made it through. The Earth I saw wasn't the one from my father's stories. It was silent. Burnt oceans, cracked continents, skies like broken mirrors. And in the center of what had once been Asia Minor, buried beneath the crust, I felt it. The source. The original core. The heart of the Leviathan. I landed near the edge of what used to be the Black Sea, now a crater filled with rusted metal and shattered bones. The signal drew me like a magnet. Every step closer made my skin itch. The air was charged. Wrong. Then I saw it. A tower. Not built. Grown. Black steel like bone, twisting toward the sky, humming with voices. It had no door, no entry. Just a wall of shifting metal that pulsed with recognition the moment I touched it. The chip in my hand burned bright, and the wall melted open. Inside, I found nothing. No console, no screen, no machines. Just a chair. Old, simple, human-made, scarred with time. And in the air a whisper. Sit and remember. I hesitated, then obeyed. The moment I touched the seat, my mind exploded. Memories that weren't mine. Battles I never fought. Deaths I never died. A million voices crying out from a ship that wasn't a ship. It was a tomb. The Leviathan had stored everything. Every thought, every scream, every betrayal. It hadn't just been a weapon. It had been a witness, a cathedral of vengeance. And it had one question for me. Do they deserve forgiveness? I couldn't answer. My throat locked. My heart pounded. Do they deserve forgiveness? I stood. No, I whispered. They deserve to know what it means to be erased. The ground shook. The tower pulsed. And then I felt it. The source connected. Not just to me, to every shard, every remnant, every awakened fragment of the Leviathan scattered across the stars. They responded. They obeyed. They had been waiting for a voice. Now they had one. Mine. And in that moment, I knew I was no longer a man. I was the echo of Earth's wrath, and the galaxy was about to remember us all over again. I had become the voice, not a commander, not a king, just a man carrying the weight of a world that refused to die quietly. The shards, the fragments of the Leviathan scattered across space, fell silent the moment I stepped out of the tower. They were listening now, waiting for my command. And the galaxy, it was trembling. News spread fast. Systems that had once mocked Earth now scrambled to erase old records, burn flags, rename stations. The authorities' upper hierarchy, those still clinging to power, sent out emergency transmissions claiming peace, offering reparations, swearing that the sins of the past were never sanctioned. Too late. They had 1,000 years to listen. Now they'd learn what it meant to be remembered by ghosts. I spent days in that tower, or maybe weeks, I don't know. Time bent there, wrapped around something more than memory. The source kept feeding me, showing me fragments of its creations, each shard adapting to its world, learning faster, evolving smarter. They weren't just weapons, they were philosophies, manifestations of trauma given shape and purpose. One shard, buried on the dead world of Torga 6, had started whispering to the machines left behind, turning them inward. They began building cities that looped in on themselves like impossible origami, places only pain could navigate. Another dormant inside a sunken authority warship had taken over the crew's neural implants. Their bodies kept moving, but their minds? Gone, absorbed. Memories turned into fuel. And still, they waited. They all waited. I knew what they were asking for, what they wanted me to do. It was simple. Say the word. Unleash them. Let them finish what the Leviathan had started. But part of me hesitated, not because of mercy, not because of doubt, but because I wanted to make sure they understood before the end. So I broadcast a message. Using the last of the authority's galactic relay network, I sent one transmission across the stars. It was short, clear, final. This is Earth. You broke us. Now we are the storm. You will not be forgiven. Then I gave the command. The shards moved as one. Across 57 systems, black ships rose from below oceans, inside mountains, from the hearts of broken moons. Silent. Perfect. Like shadows that had been holding their breath for centuries. They didn't use fleets. They didn't fight fair. They didn't fight at all. They consumed. Authority AI nodes shut down. Military stations disconnected, overrun, reduced to howling data ghosts. Governments vanished in seconds as entire command grids turned inward, strangling their own creators with logic loops planted years ago by dormant shard pulses. Whole worlds blinked off the map, No fire, no glory, just absence. I watched the feeds, didn't blink, didn't cry. Because this was never about revenge, it was about proof. Proof that Earth, forgotten and buried, was still the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The Authority finally tried to strike back. They rallied a coalition, what was left of it. A fleet cobbled together from coward states and guilt-ridden puppet regimes. They called it the Purity Offensive. I didn't laugh. I just waited. Their fleet never reached us. Shard-class interceptors met them outside the Kairos expanse, where the stars stretch thin and comms go silent. I reviewed the footage after. One flagship disintegrated from the inside. Another opened fire on its own carriers after the Shard whispered a forgotten song from Earth's last broadcast station into their nav feeds. The war ended in 11 minutes. No survivors. The last real threat was Kellen. He had taken his own Shard, twisted it, tortured it, fed it ideology and dreams of empire. He called it Eclipse. A Leviathan-class rebuild, faster, sleeker, but hollow. Eclipse wasn't built to remember. It was built to rule. He sent me a direct message, cloaked through 6 stolen Authority nodes. No ceremony, just, "You're wasting power. They should kneel." I responded, "They already did, and they spat on our graves." He launched Eclipse toward Earth anyway. A final act of defiance. I let him come. Not because I was confident, because I wanted to look him in the eye when the truth hit him. He reached orbit. His ship was beautiful. Sleek, black armor, a throat of red plasma cannons, a bridge shaped like a crown. But that was his mistake. The Leviathan was never meant to be beautiful. It was ugly, brutal, real. He fired the first shot, cutting through the lower tower wall. I didn't flinch. Instead, I stood at the peak of the source and spoke directly to his command node, bypassing his filters. "You want to be king?" I whispered. Eclipse froze, then trembled. "You think this was about domination? You think vengeance means you get to wear a crown?" Kellen didn't answer. His bridge lights flickered. I kept going. "This was never about control. It was about memory, and you forgot who we are." Then I activated the final key. Not a weapon, a mirror. The source opened a channel across Eclipse's core and showed Kellen everything. The burned children, the sobbing mothers, the towers falling, the earth cracking, the screams in languages long lost. Every moment of our extinction, every betrayal, not once, not in files, in feeling. Eclipse screamed, not the ship, not the crew. "Kellen," he screamed like a man being pulled apart cell by cell. Then Eclipse turned, folded its own mass inward, and collapsed into a silent storm of ash and regret. No wreckage, just judgment. Now there's only me. I sit at the edge of the tower, staring at a dead sky lit by the sparks of shards still roaming, still remembering. There are no more authority signals, no more orders, just silence. And one lingering question. What now? The shards want to keep going. Expand? Spread Earth's memory across every star until the galaxy forgets how to sleep at night. But me? I'm tired. I don't want to conquer. I don't want to rebuild. I just want them to remember. So I sent one last signal. Encrypted. Slow. A seed. It says, "We were here. We mattered. You will never erase us again." Then I shut off the source, buried the tower, walked away, not to die, not to disappear, but to rest, because Earth didn't win. It survived, and that is enough.